There are moments in life that feel insignificant as they unfold, quiet fragments of ordinary time that slip past unnoticed. Yet when you look back, you realize they were never small at all. That evening began like any other. A calm Thursday night where the silence of the house had long since become something I lived with rather than questioned. A silence that settled in after Daniel passed, stretching across 2 years of slow, uncertain healing, of trying to rebuild a version of myself that made sense without him. I was curled up on the living room couch with my stepson Ethan, the glow of the television flickering across the room as we half watched some loud action movie filled with explosions. The kind of film that doesn't demand attention, only fills the space, somewhere between the noise and stillness. I realized how much time had passed without me truly seeing him. Ethan wasn't the boy I remembered anymore. He sat beside me with an ease that felt different, no longer childlike. For a fleeting second, I saw him as a man. A thought that unsettled me enough that I pushed it away almost instantly, reminding myself of the lines that should never blur. Yet something had already shifted, something quiet and unspoken. The movie transitioned into an overly dramatic romantic scene, the kind that feels out of place in a film like that. I became aware of how close he was, the subtle brush of his arm against mine, the warmth of his presence, the way his breath grazed the side of my face. I told myself it was nothing, just proximity. Just coincidence, just my imagination filling in spaces that didn't need meaning. But then I looked at him, and he was already looking at me. There was something in his eyes that lingered a little too long, something deeper than casual, something warm and steady that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't want to examine. So I turned back to the screen, gripping the blanket in my hands, as if grounding myself would make the feeling disappear, convincing myself I was overthinking, that this was just one of those strange, fleeting moments that come and go without consequence. Until he said my name softly, Carla, and the way he said it made my heart pick up just enough for me to notice. When I turned to him, he hesitated like he was choosing his words carefully, then thanked me. Not in a casual way, but with a sincerity that carried weight, telling me I didn't have to stay after his father died. That I could have left, but I didn't, that I held everything together, including him. And I smiled because that's what I was supposed to do, brushing it off as something natural, something family does. But he didn't look away, and the way he held my gaze made the air feel heavier, not uncomfortable, just charged. And when he finally leaned back, giving me space again, the moment didn't disappear, it settled somewhere deep, like a ripple in still water that hadn't reached its edge yet. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said, the tone of his voice, the way he looked at me, as if he was seeing something I wasn't ready for. And the realization that he wasn't a boy anymore stayed with me longer than it should have, unsettling and persistent. The next morning, everything felt the same on the surface, yet completely different underneath. He sat across from me, sipping coffee with a quiet composure that felt deliberate, his eyes lingering just a second too long. When I moved, his smile coming easier than before. When I tried to keep things normal, asking if he slept well. The conversation flowed, but carried pauses that weren't awkward, just full of things unsaid. When he took the sponge from my hand while I was cleaning, insisting on helping in a way that felt less like obligation and more like intention, I noticed again how much he had changed, not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. The steadiness in his voice, the quiet confidence that didn't belong to a teenager anymore. Throughout the day, those small moments continued, the way he watched me when he thought I wouldn't notice, the way he complimented me without hesitation, the way his presence felt heavier in every room we shared. I found myself becoming aware of things I hadn't thought about in years, the way I looked, the way I moved, the parts of myself I had stopped seeing after Daniel was gone, realizing I wasn't invisible, that there was still something there. And the truth that Ethan had already noticed, it stirred something both unsettling and oddly comforting. As the days passed, the shift between us became undeniable in the lingering glances, the accidental touches that neither of us pulled away from, the way conversations felt heavier even when they were simple. I tried to explain it away, blaming loneliness, the quiet house, the absence that had left a space too large to ignore. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. One night, as we sat close on the couch, our arms brushing, he asked me quietly if I ever felt like certain moments were meant to happen, and I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I could lie convincingly anymore. In that silence, something shifted again. Something neither of us acknowledged out loud, but both understood. When my birthday arrived later that month, I hadn't expected anything, but seeing the candles, the carefully set table, the quiet music playing, and Ethan standing there dressed with a kind of effort that made my breath catch, I realized he had planned it all. The gesture felt too intentional to ignore, the way he looked at me as he wished me a happy birthday, the way he handed me the dress he had chosen, something bold and beautiful that I wouldn't have picked for myself. And yet I wore it, drawn in by the way he saw me, the way he made me feel seen again. When I came back down and he looked at me like I was something extraordinary, the line I had been holding on to felt thinner. Throughout the evening, the conversation flowed, but carried an undercurrent that neither of us addressed, until the space between us felt smaller, the air heavier. When he moved closer, his voice soft as he spoke, I felt the moment approaching, that point where everything would change. Even then we hesitated, aware of what it meant. Aware that once crossed, there would be no undoing it. Later, when the house felt quiet again, he admitted he couldn't keep pretending, that what he felt was real. I couldn't deny it anymore. Not to him, not to myself, because I felt it too. That pull, that connection that had grown quietly and steadily, until it demanded to be acknowledged. Standing there facing him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, I realized we were already past the point of no return. When he asked me to tell him to stop, I didn't, because the truth was I didn't want him to. And everything that followed wasn't sudden or reckless, but slow and inevitable, like something that had been building long before either of us understood it. In the aftermath, lying awake in the silence, I felt the weight of what we had done alongside the undeniable truth that I didn't regret it. And that truth was the most terrifying part of all, because it meant this wasn't a mistake I could dismiss. It was something real, something complicated and fragile and impossible to explain. As we faced each other in the quiet of the kitchen, acknowledging without words that everything had changed, I understood that we were standing at the edge of something neither of us fully understood, something that would demand choices we weren't ready to make, and yet neither of us stepped back, because despite the uncertainty, despite the consequences, waiting just beyond our control, there was something in what we felt that refused to be ignored, something that made the world outside seem distant, and as the tension between us grew, shaped by both connection and fear, I realized that whatever came next, whatever judgment or fallout we might face, we had already crossed into a place where pretending was no longer possible, and the quiet life I had rebuilt after loss was no longer the same. Because now it held something new, something alive, something dangerous. And I didn't know if it would break me or save me, only that it had already begun.